Hey there, I'm Srini, host and founder of the Unmistakable Creative Podcast and the creator of Maximize Your Output with Mem. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use Mem's Smart Write and Edit feature to translate survey data into Insight. And if you haven't checked it out, be sure to check out our free course on how to take smart notes. I'll include a link in the description below. Now, let's get to the tutorial. What I want to do in this video is show you how you can actually use SmartWrite to convert survey data into actual usable insight. Often when we have survey data, it's just a bunch of answers and a spreadsheet, and it's really hard to extract trends without some serious data analysis skills or serious Excel skills. So if you're not like a super quantitative person or you're not a data analytics person, this actually ends up being incredibly useful. The first step here is to actually gather your survey data. It doesn't matter how you do it. You can use something like Typeform. You can look through some existing survey data, and then what you're going to do is you're going to create a mem and then copy and paste those survey answers into that mem. So one thing that is really important is you want to group the data into sets that are not too big, because the Smart Write and Edit feature, particularly when you highlight text, has about 1,000 character limit. So when I click on the July 22 survey responses, you'll see here that I have survey data that I gathered from several of our newsletter subscribers to understand what they were having challenges with in terms of knowledge management, as well as what their goals were and all this different information. So I did about 5 or 6 different questions and put all of this inside of Mem just as a way to understand it. Now, what's cool is that Smart can actually translate that into usable insight that you can actually do something with. So I'm going to go through a couple of different examples of how we might translate that data into insight. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize my survey data in a paragraph. And so you can see here that I just took the biggest challenges that people were having, and I have a bunch of different bullet points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to say, summarize this in one paragraph. And you'll see here, depending on how large the data set is, it could take a minute, it could take 2, but then we just copy that. And now, rather than having to read through each one of these, we now have a summary of what people's biggest challenges were from all this different survey data. The other thing that you could do is you could actually take that same survey data and you could ask Smart Write and Edit different questions about the data that you have here. And so, for example, what I can do is I can highlight this and say something like, what are the key trends in answers? And what it will do is it will basically give back a summarized version of all of this. So now I've asked it, what are the key trends? So that's one example. What else could we ask it? We could ask it, what's the most common challenge? So you can see here that you have to play with this and you do whatever you want with it, but you can see here that from all of that, it looked like it extracted not being able to find stuff as one of the biggest challenges. Or the other thing we could do is say, summarize this in 5 bullets. And then we will have a bullet point summary of a bunch of different bullets. And you can see here that actually makes it much easier to synthesize this data and translate that into something that we can actually use. So you could ask it any questions that you wanted to. Really, it's just a matter of personal preference. So let's go back to the mem for the outline on this video. So the next thing we're going to do is make recommendations for potential solutions. And so that's literally what I'm going to type in. I'm going to say, recommend solutions for these challenges. And you can see here that this time it didn't do a very good job in terms of doing that. It actually just gave me that back. But what we could do instead of that is say, what can people do to address these challenges, or something like that. And again, your mileage is going to vary in terms of what you can do with this And you can see here that it might give you some things, and you can see here that it basically gives us a couple of different solutions that people could use. So you could actually take those solutions and say, okay, let me write an email newsletter, or we can just do that and say, okay, turn this into an idea for a blog post. And what we could do is we could actually come up with an idea for a blog post from this. And you can see here that it actually gives us a paragraph to get us started. So that's one thing we could do. The other thing that we could do using this in terms of Smart Write and Edit with our survey data, often when you come across a sales page for a product, you'll see a bunch of questions. So what we could say is, okay, take this, turn this into a question addressing a pain point. One sentence. And then what it will do is it will actually take all of that and give us one sentence that we can use in a sales page. So that's pretty cool that we can do that. So you could actually start to do this and write copy for a sales page using your survey data. And last but not least, the thing we can do is we can actually create a customer profile or avatar. And one way to do that is by just say, turn this into a story. So let's just say, turn this into a story about a guy named Dan. And what it will do is it will give us a story that is much more relatable to somebody. It's much easier to read than a bunch of stuff that would be just a bunch of bullet points. So now what you can do is you can say, okay, hey, this is Dan. He's one of my potential customers for Maximize Your Output, and this is what Dan is like. There are a lot of different things that you can do with this. It really is just about how creative you can get. Smart Write and Edit is one of MEM's most powerful features, and even though it does a lot of the things that I showed in last week's video about how to use it for knowledge management, it really has no limits other than your imagination. And the thing I think that is most important in terms of getting the most out of it is to just try lots and lots of different things. I was blown away by the fact that I could translate survey data into actual insight. I could use this to write copy. I played around with it a little bit for more quantitative data like numbers, and it does okay, but I think it's much better for things like survey data where you have words. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below.